Hello. Tonight I want to talk about the media. This whole situation with Trump's press conference has people apoplectic about him leaving the press conference in chaos and not doing a good job managing it. And, I've read all of these things, and his insistence that some media outlets are using fake news. And, an interesting thing has come out in the last few days, and that is on Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch has released on its website the entire 54-page transcripts from the Benghazi attack. I bring this up now because when Benghazi happened, there were so many of us that were reading different things on the internet and different websites, and we've said since the get-go that this wasn't about a protest, and it wasn't about a protest video. This happened in 2012. I think that if the media had not been so enamored with Obama and had done their job and done their due diligence, I don't know if he would have gotten elected to a second term. Let's face it. 4 Americans killed overseas in an attack is a pretty big deal, and especially since it was an ambassador. So my point is that in these transcripts, they knew 7 minutes after this attack started that it was not due to protests. One of the Navy SEALs was in contact with the State Department, and Patrick Kennedy was fully aware of it. Fully aware of it. He said that the attack only lasted for 4.5 hours, and that wasn't enough time to move troops to go get help. We know that that's not true either from these transcripts. And I think it's very telling that Patrick Kennedy resigned January 26th. So what does that say about the job that the media was doing while Obama was president? I'm sure people will take that different ways, but in my mind, they were so enthralled with his personality and what was happening here that they just believed everything they said. And when those of us that spoke out and said, look, this doesn't make sense, these facts aren't lining up, we were made to look like we were just, ardent Obama haters and crazy. And that wasn't the case at all. So my point here is that there is an issue with the media. There's a huge issue with the media. And I've seen several things on Facebook and on the internet where there have been a couple different sites where they will kind of lay out all the media outlets from, Slate and Vox on a super far left with Mother Jones to The Blaze and Breitbart on the super far right, and everything else is somewhere in the middle. But even the mainstream media is slightly toward the left. So we as a country need to make sure that we are checking as many different sources as we can to make sure that we're getting the correct information, because we can't just take anything at face value anymore. We just can't afford to. Can't afford to take Trump at face value, couldn't afford to take Obama at face value. There's always going to be a spin, and as a historian and as a researcher, I realize that even when you try to take your bias out of a situation, it's almost impossible to remove it completely. You just have to be aware that you have a bias and try to compensate for that. So that's kind of my passionate rant tonight. I just got kind of fired up when I was reading about the press conference, and then looking at Judicial Watch got me a little more fired up. So those of you that are interested to see this, it's on the first page of judicialwatch.com. And all the transcripts are there if you want to look at them. So I would suggest doing so, because it all flies in the face of what our government sold to us in 2012.